Hey friends, it's Tracy. Welcome to today's video. I have a special one because I've put a collection video together of all of my Americana primitive country crafts to share with you. I will conveniently have the timestamps for each video in the description box below. Just click see more or more to open up that box, and you can click on the timestamps and you can click to certain parts of the video. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me show what I have done for this season with Americana primitive country crafts. I'm going to be creating an American flag with an Old Glory tag. Now I am using one of these frames that I picked up from Hobby Lobby during the 75% off sale. It was only $3.74. I love the rusticness of it. The way that the frame is that is exactly how it came. All right, that fabric that I was showing you, that is what I'm going to use on the first part to show you how I did the flag. Now I'm going to be adding a background, and I'm going to be doing the crackle technique with the school glue. And so the background is already white, but I wanted a more muted tone, so I used Cashew Waverly chalk paint. So I put that on there, and then here I am just putting on some school glue, just regular school glue, and really I put too much. But I don't know this then, but as I go along, I should have put some of it back into the bottle because it was a little too thick, and I wanted it thicker because I wanted the bigger cracks, but I got a little bit too much. I guess the background of the whatever was that, backing on this individual frame, it was not very porous, and so it just kind of sat right on the top. So I just used my my foam brush just to brush that glue around, and then while it's still wet, I'm going on putting on a coat of just plaster color with chalk paint, then taking my heat tool just to kind of speed up the crackle process. And yeah, it was really thick, but it dried, but I just really wasted the glue because I really didn't need to put that much glue on there. So I'm just sharing kind of tips that I'm going along the way, because of this project, I love the way that it turned out in the end, but in crafting, things are just going to happen. And so I was really looking for those big cracks like that. But yeah, it took a little bit longer because the glue was a little thick. All right, so then I'm using this ticking fabric that I've had on hand in my stash, and so this was going to be my stripes for the red on my flag. And so but you can see that they're a little bit thinner, and what I did is I ripped them in about a little over an inch strips. And so I think that was my first mistake. I should have made them a little bit wider because in the end they were too thin. I'll show you that in just a second. And so for the stars part of it, now this is just a replica, just a craft project. There's nothing going to be anything precise. No disrespect to our American flag. This is just, something to celebrate the season. Just to do a little bit of the fraying edges, I just took my sanding sponge and just went around and frayed the edges just a little bit. All right, so then I'm going to add a little bit of stiffening to my strips, as well as some coffee, just to grunge them up a little bit. I was kind of going for the more grungy look, but these strips are way too thin, and I do not realize it until I get it actually finish the whole entire project. But I kind of am sharing with you in case you like the thinner strips. I'm just kind of sharing with you what I made and how I made this project. So for the blue fabric with the stars, I thought it was just a little too wide. So I just cut off a strip of that, and going to do the same thing just with some Mod Podge and some of the coffee just to grunge it up a bit. And then I'm going to start layering on my stripes on my board. Now, I know you see it as well as I do. It looks like bacon. That's what my grandson told me. He goes, Fanny, that's my grandma name. That looks like strips of bacon. I was like, you know what? It really does. So I was kind of going for the wavy, Old Glory look. And so I was just putting those on there and just hot gluing them into strips. Thank goodness I did, because if I would have probably used a more permanent glue, I wouldn't have been able to take those off. And that's what I did, because I just put the strips on and did when I put the blue fabric on, I made my bow and all of that stuff. I really didn't like it. And so just because I added the hot glue, I was able to take off all of those stripes and the fabric, and then, make it with the fabric that I got at Hobby Lobby. So here I'm going to share how I made my bow on this bow dabra, and I am going to add a lot of these different little fabrics and just some ribbons of trim, some pearls. I have some pit berries that I'm going to add. I'm just going to add some, different strips of fabric and stuff. And so a lot of this this is just strips of fabric, and so I am just twisting it and just kind of just making a bow. And it was a little bit bigger than what I liked, but I don't know, I just got kind of carried away. I love just adding all of these different layers of ribbon and fabric and lace and trims and all of that stuff. You can just really make your bow as big or as little as you want, and then just tie it all off. I used a zip tie just to secure everything together. I stuck those pit berries in there in the middle so that they could stand out a little bit more. And an Americana project like this, especially an Old Glory, an American flag, definitely needed some pit berries. For the Old Glory tag, I just have a market tag that I've tea stained. I've had several of these for many years and pull them out for projects like this. I really feel that it gives a bit of a rustic touch that I like. All right, so I'm just doing some hand lettering and just using my black Sharpie marker and just drawing out or hand lettering Old Glory. Now, I know that this is just a little bit of, if this is not something that you can do or you want to do, you can use stickers, you can use stamps, you can use your Cricut, don't even put a sign at all. I just kind of like to share my projects and what I do, and I'm so grateful that you're here watching. All right, so I'll just add the little happy dots on each one of my letters like I like, and then I'll use my paint pen to add a little bit of white highlight in each of the dots. I also use a paint pen to add a little bit of doodling around the edges. Then I will use my Distress ink in Vintage Photo. That is my go-to ink for distressing, just to distress it and make it all rustic and cute the way that I like it. I added a bow of just hemp cording or jewelry cording, and I just like it. Just gives it a little bit of extra whimsical touch. I'm also adding the tag with a rusty safety pin because I couldn't tie it on. It was too thick. And so I love that because it gives a bit of more rustic goodness. And I just wanted to show you this here, how I attached the bow to the top part of my frame. This frame is wood, so I just used my stapler just to staple some of the fabric to attach the bow to the actual, part of the frame. And so I'm glad that I did this because then I was able to take all of that fabric off and do it the way that I wanted it for my, for my flag. And so I left all of this in here just to, if there's a person that wants to recreate it with the thinner strips like this, I wanted to show you what it would look like. This is still project number 1, but with option 2. All right, so I found the fabric that I wanted over at Hobby Lobby, and once I figured out that I could take off all of these stripes that I already had on, I know it's just a little bit of extra work, but I'm glad that I was able to remove this so I didn't have to, figure out somewhere else or some way else to do this project. So I'm going to use that same blue with the stars, and for my fabric I just kind of measured it out I just kind of guesstimated it, and then I just cut it down to the size that I wanted, and then just hot glued it there on the board. And I chose hot glue again because if I want to take it off and use the board for something else, I can do that. So I'm going to do that same technique with the Mod Podge and the Coffee Grunge to make it more distressed. So here I'm just tacking it down with some hot glue, and then I'll just use some Mod Podge and some coffee just to grunge it up. And to just enhance it a bit more for my liking, I just took my antique wax, which I get over at Walmart. It's the Waverly brand, and I just stipple on a little bit more distressing just so that the whole project just kind of ties in together. And I absolutely love this second option, and I hope you do too. For my next project, I'm going to share a really quick little shelf sitter or tier tray little craft with you. All right, I'm starting with 3 of these plastic little mason jars from the Dollar Tree. You can get them at different times throughout the year. These just happen to be from Valentine's Day. I'm also going to be using some scrapbook paper that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, as well as some chalk paint. All right, so what I did, these small lids are just little metal lids, and I just decided to paint them with just some chalk paint. I'm doing blue for one and red for the other. And so the blue, this one right here was the Ocean Waverly blue, but that was not the color I was going for. So I'll go back later and add a layer of just acrylic navy blue. And so for the red, what I used is crimson chalk paint, and I gave it 2 coats of the chalk paint just to make sure that it had a really good coverage. As I mentioned, the scrapbook paper came from Hobby Lobby, and I just trimmed it down with my trimmer. Then what I'm going to do is, once I get the size that I want, I just roll it up and then just put it inside the jar, and it just kind of like expands what it needs to. And then I have an instant American flag in my mind. I do. And so I just, I think that this is really cute. Just, they're so versatile, kind of just really, I was kind of going for like those mason jars that you paint in a American flag type of design. And so I think that this is a great little alternative, and since it's not permanent, I can change out the paper for different seasons. And then I'll just repaint the lids. So I'm just saying, for those of us that don't want to have permanent things, that we want to share just some budget-friendly decor, this is a great alternative. I'm going back here real quick because once I put the paper in there, I decided I wanted it to be a little bit more even with the top so that I wouldn't have any space between there. So for the striped paper that I had trimmed off, I just taped it back and rolled it back over on itself, and you can't tell any difference. And I have an instant shelf sitter or 3-tier tray, decor piece that is very budget friendly. I just added some paint splatters using the sandstone chalk paint. Now I'm going to add a tag, and this little market tag is something that I had on hand. So I just take my ultrafine Sharpie marker, just hand letter America, and then do the happy dots, what I like to do. I'm also going to add some stitching with my black marker, as well as some white highlights in each of the happy dots, just with a white paint pen. I'm going to cut down this tag because it was a little wide, and so then I add the little stitching. Then I will use my Vintage Photo Distress ink. It is my go-to ink for this color, and so then I add a little bit of distressing to my tag, and then add my little happy dots. And then what I'll do is give the lids a coat of varnish, and this is the varnish that I like to use. You can get it off of Amazon. I do have it linked in my Amazon store if that is something that you're interested in, and this little just simple budget friendly patriotic project. For this project, I'm going to share my version of the primitive country firecrackers. Now, I have been wanting to make some of these for several years, and there's inspiration all over Pinterest and all over, Google. You can just really be inspired. All right, so what I have here these are some of the supplies I'm using. For the base of my firecracker, I'm just using hair rollers that I got from the Dollar Tree. And so, it has the part where the little bendy part, because these are hair rollers. And so I just needed to kind of pull that white piece back. There is a small hole. I didn't want to take that plastic piece out because if I wanted to bend my firecrackers, I wanted, to keep that all together. All right, so then what I did is I have this 4-ply jute. It's a little bit thicker jute that I get from Hobby Lobby, and that is going to be the wick, I guess, of the firecracker part of it. All right, so then I made one using some primitive fabric. That ticking fabric I had on hand, and those stars I got at Hobby Lobby recently. And so I wanted to make my firecracker just a little bit, the hair roller is green, and so I was going to have to paint it, or I wanted to make it a little bit thicker, so I decided to get just a brown lunch bag, just wrap that up. It made it a tad thicker, and then also it covered up the green, so I didn't have to paint it. So I just glued that on there, and then kind of figured out how I can cover up a bit of that green around the wick of the firecracker so that I didn't have to paint that either. All right, so then for the ticking fabric, I just have some of this, and I'm just hot gluing it all onto the bottom of the firecracker, and then around the top is where I will put the blue stars, and I just ripped the fabric just to give it a tattered look. Again, there are different, with fabric stores, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Joann's, all of that. You can find all different kind of patriotic fabric to suit your style and your decor to make your firecrackers the way that you would like. And for that jute, I will just kind of unravel it so that it looks a little wispy, and then just trim off any of the wick the way that I, want for the size of my firecrackers. Now, I could leave them like this, and again, you can, just whatever your decor style is perfect. You can change up the fabric with the patriotic fabric that is out there. I like a little more primitive country grunge, and so how I achieve that look is just some Mod Podge and some instant coffee, and I just spread the Mod Podge on and just sprinkle on the coffee. I could also add a little bit of cinnamon, but honestly, while I was doing this video, I kind of forgot about it, so I may go back and add a little bit more Mod Podge and put a little cinnamon on there just to give it a little bit of, just the sweet smells that I like for my primitive country projects. my Primitive Country Rustic Uncle Sam. So I'm starting with a piece of weathered board. This is an old fence post. The brim of the hat is also a weathered piece of wood, and I'm going to show you here how I painted it up, but I end up changing it because I was not happy with it, and so I just could not do this brim. I was just not happy with it. Anyway, so what I'm doing now is this board measures about a little over 13 inches by 5.5. And so then I just traced out like where the face would go. And I am using the color Medium Flesh. That is a ceramic coat paint color. And but I like the more a little darker flesh, but they're all kind of like Santa flesh, flesh tone, that kind of thing. Okay, so then I'm just taking my brush and navy acrylic paint, and I think this is a Deco Art color, but any kind of dark. I'm making it primitive country, so I have the dark reds, the dark blue, and then I'm just the antique white and all that stuff. And so here what I'm doing is painting the top and the sides antique white, and then that is going to be like the face and then the hat and all of that good stuff. For my stripes, I'm using a 1-inch flat paintbrush as well as some barn red paint color. It is a ceramic coat color as well. So then I start in the middle and just take my time and just make these stripes. You can also use painter's tape, use a ruler, something like that, but I just wanted to, I'm here to encourage, inspire, and just to give ideas for different rustic country crafts. So I'll just continue to make my stripes with this barn red and all the way around how I like to do it. And then I usually give it about 2 coats of the barn red, and that gives a really good coverage. And I'm trying something new here. I get so many comments and feedback from just friends that say that it's very relaxing to watch painting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll put some different tidbits on the screen so that you kind of know what colors I'm using or what I'm doing. I just want to mention really quick, for my beard, I like to use this caulk that I get from the Dollar Tree in the tool section. I just put it on. I use that as my beard, and I just put it on just with a little craft stick, and so that I just spread it on like I'm frosting a cupcake. That's just kind of how I describe it. So since I changed my mind and not used that God bless the USA part for the brim, I just traced out a pattern just on cardstock, and then I traced that out onto foam board, and then cut that out and just painted it with navy blue. I love that much better. I also added some paint splatters, what I like to do for my primitive country rustic projects. And so again, my purpose is just really to inspire, to entertain you, and to just, be part of the community that loves crafting and just sharing different ideas. I also added just a small bow with just some fabrics and a rusty star that I had on hand. This is how I painted this shelf sitter, and through my primitive country rustic Uncle Sam, you were seeing it in the frame. I know, because I was going to use it as the brim of the hat, but then I had another thought, so that's why I'm doing this like this. Okay, so I'm just taking the flat number 2 paintbrush that's in that paint pack that I like to use, that is in my Amazon shop. And so I do have the gift of hand lettering. The Lord has given me the patience and also the determination to learn how to hand letter. And sometimes I'm a little rusty if I don't hand letter for a while. And so, it is kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. And so I just hand letter God Bless America, put my little happy dots on there as well. Then I go back and use just a very thin, small, round brush and just write out the. And so I liked the, just the whimsiness of this right here. And so then, as I said, I just, decided to use this as a little shelf sitter versus the brim of the hat for my primitive country rustic Uncle Sam. of brown bags from my local grocery store, and these are some of the supplies I'm using to create these brown bag American flag bowl fillers. All right, so then what I'm going to do is cut off the bottom part of the brown bag right before the crease, and I was going to use my scissors but decided it was easier just to pull out my paper trimmer to trim off that bottom part. Then to glue those flaps down, I just used some hot glue just there, just so that they would be all, glued down. And so then what I'll do is I'll cut this in half, and then that will give me the 2 flags that I need for my bags. So I'm going to be using the Mod Podge heat transfer method, and if you're not familiar with that, that is just to put a layer of a Mod Podge on your surface, dry that up. You can let it dry, air dry, or I speed it up just with my heat tool. And then I'm going to be working on one side first, and then I'll flip it over and make it do the other side, just so that I have a 2-sided flag. And so right here what I'm doing is there's one side that is open, or both sides are open, but I want to close one of them before I start working on it so that I know which side is the open one. And so this red and cream ticking fabric is something that I had on hand. I've had it for many years. I'm not quite sure where I got it from, but guys, you can get homespun fabric like this at Hobby Lobby. You can get it at Joann Fabrics. You can get it at Walmart. And also there is an online shop that I have found called Jubilee Fabric that you can get wonderful homespun fabrics just like this. So I will have a link in the description, or you can see exactly what it is right there on the screen. All right, so then I just ripped off a piece of the ticking fabric, just the size that I wanted, and then I'm going to go ahead and use a piece of parchment paper just as a barrier, a buffer, and then the little heating tool, the iron that I'm using is called a Cricut mini press. This is just something that I had on hand, and that's what I use as my little mini iron, just for my projects. And so then sometimes I don't get my fabric. Most often I do not measure my fabric correctly. And so I just cut it off, and just to get a bit of the jagged, tattered edges, I just take my sanding sponge just on the edges just to tatter them up a bit more. And then once that side is dry, then I'll work on the other side, doing the same thing just by putting a layer of Mod Podge, drying that up, putting my red ticking fabric on, and then both sides are ready to go with that. Then what I'll do is with the stars fabric, now this fabric I got at Hobby Lobby recently this year, and so then what I do is I just do the same thing. I put some Mod Podge on it, rip off, tatter up the piece that I want, put it up there in the corner, and I have an American flag bowl filler that's ready to be distressed and perfect for my Americana primitive country decor. To distress my American flag bowl fillers, what I did is just took my distress ink and my finger dauber. It's a little sponge on the end of a little plastic thing that fits over your finger. You can find those in the stamp section at any craft store, or they have them online on Amazon. And so what I do is I just go over it just to give it a little bit of distressing, and then I want to crinkle it up a bit more so that I kind of have some folds in it, or just some bends. And then I'm just taking some polyfill, some stuffing. You can use an old pillow or something like that, or something else that you want to stuff your flag with, and then just stuff that in there, and then I just glue that down just like that. This part is totally optional, but if you like a little grunge to your Americana primitive country bowl fillers, I achieve that by just adding a little bit of Mod Podge in certain areas, sprinkle on a little bit of cinnamon, kind of smooth that out a little bit. I let it dry completely like the next day. They look really, really good, and I love them so much. Again, that's totally optional if you are not into the primitive grunge. This next step is optional as well, but I just want to share what I did for my American flag bowl fillers. Now, I wanted a little bit of extra pizzazz, and I achieved that with some glitter and some adhesive spray. That is just Elmer's adhesive spray that I got at one of the craft stores. And then the glitter is called Snow Flurry. I got that at Hobby Lobby. And so I just love how this just really makes my American flag bowl fillers sparkle just a little bit. For the little tags for my bowl fillers, I have some of these market tags that I've had on hand. You've seen me use these in previous videos. I just tea stained a bunch of them and then pull them out when I want to use them on a project. So I took my ultrafine Sharpie marker and just hand lettered USA. I am going to do freedom as well as liberty, and I do that with my like I said, my black Sharpie marker. This is the ultra fine version, and I do some little stitching around the edges. I also crumple it up and use my vintage photo distress ink just to grunge it up or distress it a bit more, because that is my style, that is my look, and that's what I like. All right, so then for the like a little extra, like I didn't want to like a big bow or anything like that, so I just have some cheesecloth that I have also coffee stained, and you know, I just cut that up, and I got this cheesecloth at the grocery store. I think it was Walmart. And all I did was just coffee stain it, put it in coffee, let it dry, and then I just cut it into pieces and use it for a small projects like this. And so here what I'm doing is I just took my small tag as well as a rusty safety pin and a rusty jingle bell that I had on hand just to give it a little bit more interest for my American flag bowl fillers. So here what I decided to do is hand letter freedom as well as liberty, and so then that tag is a little bit too big, so I just cut that down with my scissors and then again attach it to the corner of each of the flags with a rusty safety pin as well as a little jingle bell. And how I style my bowl fillers is just in a dough bowl. I have several sizes and I just figure out which one I want to use. I just add some polka pods in with it as well. It's kind of like primitive country potpourri. I just put my little wooden spindles and my other little creative things that I have in my primitive country Americana home. All right, I'm starting with two of these 4x4 prints. These patriotic Americana prints are from Jennifer Pugh Studios on Etsy. And the signs I'm using are a couple that I picked up from Hobby Lobby during the 75% off sale. And so I love these. I'm a big fan of Jennifer Pugh, and these are perfect for what I wanted for my Americana crafts. So what I did with the signs is that one you can see there, I have the back taken off. That one came off pretty easy. I just used my heat tool and my spatula and my serrated knife and really kind of got that off of there. But when I tried it on the second one, it wasn't budging. It was not coming off. So I went to plan B and just decided to use the signs the way that they were and, you know, made it just a little bit different. So I pulled out another sign that I had on hand and, you know, decided to just scrape off a little bit of that eat part. I didn't worry about painting it or anything because I'm going to cover it up with some scrapbook paper. Okay, so for the 4x4 prints, I just went ahead and trimmed them all off, and then I'll move on to the next part. The scrapbook paper I decided to use is this parchment paper. Now, every time I use this scrapbook paper, I always get a comment or a question asking where I got it. I've had it on hand for many years. I don't remember exactly where I got it from. Of course, probably a craft store. It is the paper company, and it's called Parchment Tan. I did try to Google it, but I couldn't find anything. But anyway, I just got it and decided to use it for my projects. All right, so what I did is I just trimmed off some of it and kind of ripped the edges so it would give me those jagged edges. Then I took my Distress ink in Vintage Photo and just my finger dauber and gave it some distressing around the edges. All right, so then here what I'm showing you here, now this is a paper distresser tool that I've had on hand. You can get them. I do have one in my Amazon shop if that's something that you're interested in. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have even wasted my time doing this because it is what it is. I just like to rip the paper. That gives me a better jagged edge the way that I liked. And so then here for my Jennifer Pugh prints, what I'm using are foam squares, or a lot of scrapbookers, we refer to them as pop dots. So I have some of these on hand, and I just use some of those just to put on the back of those prints, just to pop them up a little bit, and then I will attach that to the front of my sign. For the wording on my tags, I'm going to use one of my Magnolia Design Co. stencils. This is the 12-pack summer rolling pins set, and it has different sayings on it, but I'm going to be using the USA as well as the stars and stripes. And so I just have my towel here that I'm just fuzzing on it, just to give it a little bit of, so it is not so sticky and it pulls my scrapbook paper off later. And so I have the ink that I have is the black chalk paste and my little squeegee, and just giving myself enough room on this little tag, for me to be able to tear around it and all of that good stuff. So that's what I do, is I just tear around it just to expose a little bit of the edge. Then I'm just going to add a hole in it with my crocodile. Of course, a hole puncher would work as well. And then I will age it a little bit more by crumpling it up and giving a little bit of distress ink around the edges. I'll do a little bit of doodling with some black paint pens that I also got off of Amazon. They are listed in my Amazon shop as well. And so then what I was going to do is add this USA sign to the star, but then I decided to add a little bit of pizzazz just by adding a little bit of glitter. And so, a patriotic sign has to have some glitter, right? So this glitter is called Snow Swirl, and I got it over at Hobby Lobby. I just used some spray adhesive in my little makeshift little spray here, just out of a big cereal box. And I just make that so that, because that spray is very sticky and it gets all over my table. So I just kind of have made myself a little box here so that I can keep that all together. And so then I'm going to do the same thing with the USA one, is give it a little bit of spray, sprinkle a little bit of glitter on, and then I'm going to move on to my next tag using the Magnolia Design Co. Little stencil, stars and stripes. Now the wording is straight, but I wanted to see if I could figure out how to make these stars on one line and then and stripes on the other line, and then I'm gonna put a little star on it. So I figure I did pretty good for my first time to do this way, but honestly, it's good to try something new. You never know when we're going to find our passion and that kind of thing. And so I just love the way that this all turned out. I pulled out my black acrylic paint pen, the medium tip. Now I got these off of Amazon as well. And guess what I'm going to do, guys? I'm going to add a small dot to the end of each letter just to give it my happy dots. ever hide things from yourself? I do that a lot. I cleaned up my craft room and I could not find my tea stained cheesecloth. And so I went to the next best thing. I have this creepy cloth that I've had on hand. I got it like after Halloween was over at either Dollar Tree or Dollar General. And I just cut pieces of that and just add that to my primitive country Americana crafts just to give me that kind of cheesecloth look. Anyway, it worked. It's kind of a little stringy, but it works just fine. So then before I add my tag, I just want to tie a couple pieces of homespun. I have some blue homespun as well as some dark red homespun. Now for this star right here, I added that Stars and Stripes tag that I created using that Magnolia Design Co. stencil. I just love bringing, kind of new, fresh ideas to my already primitive country projects, just because I know that there are a lot of people that want to hand letter and that don't want or don't have the patience or whatever. So this is an option. If you want to know more information, just let me know. I'll put my website there on the screen so that you can find these Stars and Stripes, and also the USA. You can find that stencil as long as it's available. All right, so then what I also do is add a small rusty star to the middle of my Stars and Stripes little block here. And so that little star came from an ornament, like a pack of ornaments from Hobby Lobby in the little miniature ornament section. All right, so then I'm going to do the same thing with the other block. Just tie a couple of pieces of homespun around that, as well as some of that creepy cloth, aka I'm going to use it as kind of some cheesecloth, just a little extra. I like that look. It just kind of gives it that primitive country look, that softness, that vintagey look that I like for my projects. I have a couple of rusty jingle bells that I have on hand, and just tying all of that together with some hemp cording or jewelry cording that I find in the jewelry section. And I use that a lot in my primitive country Americana projects. And I just love the way that these blocks turned out. I love using the tumbling tower blocks, the larger ones that I can pick up from Five Below store. And also I wanted to share that I recently, this summer 2023, I found Walmart to have their tumbling tower blocks on clearance. So check the toys section, and these are the larger blocks that are the same size as the tumbling tower blocks from Five Below. Okay, so what I did is I took two of them and painted them with an antique white color. I took another one and painted that with the midnight blue color as well. Then I have my Magnolia Design Co. stencil. This is the Stars and Stripes. I'm also going to be using the coal black chalk paste. And what I did is because I am going to want to, that's what's good about these stencils. You can cut them apart. These are silk screen stencils. They're reusable. And so I use them on the other project that I had here in this collection. And so I just rinse them out immediately after I get finished, stenciling on my color. And so what I did is just use my coal black and just my little squeegee. What I did also is I just cut one of those squeegees in half. I got this tip from a fellow Magnolia Design Co. creator. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's genius. So if we want to get into these little bitty spaces, and I know I got off a little bit on the side, I'll be aware of that, in the future. And so I just painted over that. So I'm going to add some happy dots and just using my acrylic paint marker in black. And these are listed in my Amazon storefront if that is something that you're interested in. And so what I do is I just go and put a little dot on the end of each letter like I like to do. I love my happy dots and my paint squiggles. I love to paint on bottles and make cute little characters. And so what I'm using is an recycled vinegar bottle. Now this is a glass bottle, and once I finished out, using the white distilled vinegar, I'm like, this is too good to throw away or recycle. I'm gonna create something with that. So put it in my stash, and here I am. And so what I did is I'm gonna be putting some chalk paint on it, and so I need the chalk paint to stick. So because this glass is not porous, it needs either a primer or some kind of chalk paint. Sticks very well to glass, so that's why I'm using that. So I gave it a coat of plaster color chalk paint just to give it like a base. Then for the top part of the vinegar bottle, I am just going to use the color chalk paint Cashew, which is a Waverly chalk paint that I get over at Walmart. And so I gave it 2 coats of that kind of at the top of the bottle, because that's where I'm going to have my stripes. All right, so then I had purchased this chalk paint Night Sky, which is Waverly, but I was very disappointed. I thought it was darker than what it is. So I ended up going to my acrylic paint, which is Midnight Blue Americana. And since I already have these layers of chalk paint underneath there, my Midnight Blue paint sticks very well. So I give it 2 coats of that. 1 would have been sufficient, but I'm extra, and I just gave it 2 coats of that. On this individual recycled, repurposed vinegar bottle, there are these little lines already in the glass, and so I use those to my advantage just to have the sections for my stripes. So I'm using Barn Red. It's my favorite darker red for my primitive country projects like this Sweet Primitive Country Uncle Sam. It's Americana. Now guys, I have been doing this for many years as far as like painting in these colors. In my home, I had for years, I decorated in Americana with the dark maroons, the dark reds, the darker blues, the mustards, the dark greens, and that kind of thing. And so I'm really drawn to that. And so it really made me happy to paint one of these up for you. I always say I'm a bit old school, and I do love just this look, and I'm so fortunate that a lot of people do as well. Now, I share to give inspiration, change up the colors, to whatever colors you may like. But I'm so fortunate and so blessed that there are so many sweet friends here that love this style of Americana crafts as well. Now I'm going to start working on my Uncle Sam's face, and for the flesh tone paint I'm using the Ceramic Coat Color Flesh Tone. Now I'm making a circle you know, for the face, but then I go back later and make that circle just a little bit bigger because you know, I can always make my face bigger, but sometimes if I make it too big, then I have to go back and repaint over it. And so then once I get that, then I decide I want a few more stars around, just some of those little small stars. And like I had put on the screen, I've had this primitive star stencil for many years. I bought it a long time ago, probably at Hobby Lobby or Walmart or something like that. I couldn't find it online, but I know that Amazon does have different different styles of primitive star stencils. And the reason that I say that is because every single time I use something, I always get asked. And so I do try to think ahead for questions that someone's going to ask. And so that's why I say that. And so then for the beard, my preference is to use the white caulk from Dollar Tree. And I just kind of spread it on around the face and use a small stick just to spread it on. I always reference, I kind of feel like I'm spreading it on like a cupcake. And so I'll just spread that on like that and let that dry completely. Then what I'm going to do is give it a little bit of distressing. I water down a bit of brown paint, and then that is what I give, just the look of, I'll show you the difference of what it looks like with the little aged brown paint or with the brown paint on it, and then it kind of looks a little aged versus the white. And as you can see, just by adding the watered down brown paint and adding it to that caulking just gives it a vintage or more aged look. And what I did is add just the white to the eyes with my little detailing brush. And then I didn't have it on camera, but I just added some black and buttermilk or antique white paint splatters to the entire bottle. And I love that look, and I'm so happy that you're here. For his beard or mustache, I have this homespun yarn that I've had on hand for many years. You can find some yarn similar to this at Michael's or maybe Hobby Lobby. I wrap it around my fingers about 6 or 7 times. I use my cutter bees. First I tie it off in the middle, then I use my cutter bee scissors, and you need some sharp scissors for this to get in between those loops, cut those apart to fluff it up. Now, what I did here is I did not like it, but I added some rub and buff to my Uncle Sam's beard, thinking that it would, make him a little bit, more vintagey, more, distinguished, but yeah, I put way too much. Rub and buff is definitely something that you use a little. You use a little, just a tiny bit goes a long way. And so I end up later going back and adding more caulking to the beard and really kind of lighten that up because I did not like that much gold rub and buff. All right, so then for his nose, what I did is I have a 1/2 inch wood plug. That's what I like to use for my little faces, and then I just glue that on. I found my cheesecloth that I picked up over at Hobby Lobby, cut off a couple of strips of that, as well as some of that blue and homespun, as well as some of that ticking homespun that I had on hand. Just cut a couple of strips of that and added that to the top of the Uncle Sam jar, and added my tag as well as a rusty star. And I just love it so much. Like I said, guys, I've decorated my home in Americana like this, and I would leave this up all year round. I'm finding with my Americana crafts that there are a lot of friends and followers that tell me that they do as well. All right, so what I started with is a mason jar that is the body of my American Girl, and that one is from Dollar Tree during the fall season. But you know, they have them at different times throughout the year. I'm also using some 8.5 by 11 inch scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby, as well as a 6.5 inch circle. Now I had that one on hand. I'm not quite remembering where I got it from, but that is going to be the head of my American Girl. Okay, so what I do is I just trace out the paper. I tape it on the back because I want it, you know, a certain part of it. I love those stars at the bottom of that red and kind of off-white striping. I wanted to keep that for my America Girl. And so I used my adhesive tape glider. This is just something that I had, I got at the craft store, but you can get it off of Amazon. I do have it in my Amazon shop. And so what I do is I just use my adhesive tape glider to get the majority of the, tape onto my scrapbook paper, but then I go back later and I add some Fabri-Tac glue, which is kind of like a paper glue, and it works really good. And I make sure that those edges are all glued down. And I just sand off any extra paper with my little sanding sponge. Okay, so I recently got this new antique brown wax. I got it off of Amazon. It is listed in my Amazon shop if you want to see exactly. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. The color is a little bit darker than what I liked. I just used my stencil brush just to kind of get a little bit of antiquing distressing on there. As I said, it was a little dark, so I went back with my stencil brush and some antique white paint and just kind of, lightened that up a little bit, and I like that a little bit better. Then I'll just add a little bit of doodling with my little detailing brush, just adding some squiggles all around the mason jar just to give it the look that I want for my primitive country projects. For the head or the face of my doll or my American Girl, I have this 6.5 inch circle. It's wood and it's beveled. It looks like it is routered, and I don't know. I've had it in my stash for several years, and decided to pull it out because I thought it was perfect for this. So I gave it a couple of coats of flesh tone acrylic paint, and then I did my shading technique with the milk chocolate brown paint, what I like to do. And then next, what I'm doing here is adding the cheeks. I like the moral rectangle up and down cheeks, and I just used a stencil brush and some coral color paint to achieve the look that I want. Next, I'm going to work on the eyes, and at first I was going to make the eyes be a little bit farther apart, but it didn't work. It just did not work. I have to stay true to myself of what I like to do for my little cute whimsical faces. So usually what I do to start drawing the eyes is I will start out with either a pencil or a black Sharpie marker, and then I'll fill it in with paint. And as you could see here, as I was making it, I was getting a little bit closer, because I like to make my eyes a certain way. Like I called it a little more almond shaped, little ovals, touching at the top. And then I just like that. I have a little detailing brush that I've had for several years. It's been with me for a long time, and I just make the little eyelashes as well as some eyebrows. I'm going to also add just a simple mouth, and then also just with some antique white paint, just add some whimsical effects to the cheeks just to make them, look like that a little bit. Then I will add just some white to the eyes, and depending on what side or how you put the white in will depend on how the face is looking or the eyes are looking. And then I just take my flat paintbrush and that milk chocolate acrylic paint and do some shading around it. I really feel that it just really gives an enhanced look for my primitive country projects. And I just go around each of the eyes and the cheeks and the mouth and all of that good stuff. And since I had a little bit of brown paint left, I just took a thin paintbrush, just the end of it, and then just dipped it in there and just added a few freckles to my little girl's face. Next, I'll take my ultrafine Sharpie marker and just add a little bit of doodling around the face because I love my doodles and my dots and all of my paint splatters too. So for my American girl, for her arms, what I'm using is paint stir sticks that I picked up this pack from Lowe's, and I figure out how long I want them, and then I needed to cut off a piece of that, and I just use my little scissors here, like my scissors for this stuff like this that I can cut, that I don't have to bother my husband or pull out my saw. I just like that when I can just do this myself with my little scissors. And these are little tonic scissors. I have them listed in my Amazon shop as well. And so I reference that a lot just because it's easy for people to find and to navigate. All right, so then I just take my antique wax and just give it a stain on the back side because, I don't want it to be not finished. And then what I did is I painted the bottom part that flesh tone because that is going to be her hands. And then for the arms or the sleeves, I just cut off strips of paper that is the same as the those stars that are part of her dress, the top of her dress. But before I do that, I just gave some brown shading to the hands so that, it all would tie in together. And then to attach that paper, I just used my Fabri-Tac glue, and my individual bottle was not cooperating very well, so I kind of had to struggle with it a little bit, and then I just used a little just a little stick to spread it out so that it would all be on there evenly. And then I just attached the paper to there. And then I just used some antique brown, that wax that I got from Amazon, and just went around the edges just to give it a little bit of distressing. Just made sure that it was all kind of like looked the same. And so then I used my ultrafine Sharpie marker just to give a little bit of black doodling around the hands. And then once that distress ink was dry, I went back with my antique white to do a little dry brushing. To make some hair for my sweet little American girl, I pulled out this moss. Now, I can't really remember if I got this over at Hobby Lobby or Joann's. I can't remember, maybe Walmart. I've had it on hand for a little bit. It's not quite thin enough for me to use all of the time, but I was going through my supplies and said, this would make some perfect hair for my little American girl. So what I did is I just took little sections and just glued it around the top of the head, so that it all stuck on there. And then I put some on the back as well until I got to a certain point, because I'm going to wrap that fabric around and make her like a bow, that you see in the picture at the top of her head. So that's what I do. This Stars fabric is from Hobby Lobby, and I just start at the back, and I kind of take my time and just kind of position it, give a dot of hot glue, position it, give a dot of hot glue until I get the look that I want. And then I just make a bow at the top, and I just love it. I think my opinion, she looks so sweet. So it took a little finagling, just to get the look that I wanted. And like I said, I just took my time, just kind of pushed in, gave some glue, and just made her look really sweet. And then once I got the bow finished, then I just added a little bit more of that brown moss excelsior stuff just to give it the thickness that I wanted underneath, so that it would have something to, glue to. And I just love this so much. I just think she looks so sweet, and that's my own opinion. All right, to attach the head to the body, I'm using a combination of E6000 glue as well as hot glue. The E6000 is the permanent hold, and then the hot glue is the instant hold. So I'll do that and hold it for a few seconds, put a couple of clamps on there. Then I have 2 large giant craft sticks. Now I found this pack at Walmart, and so I'm going to glue those to the back. This is why I haven't added hair to the actual back of her head yet, because I wanted to put these sticks down so that they glue where it holds everything together. Then I'll go back and add more of the brown moss excelsior stuff just to cover up some of those sticks. I finish up the arms by adding a bit of doodling to them with some antique white paint. And there you can see in the left corner, my grandson was hanging out with me in my craft room. So treasure that time this summer with him. Okay, for the bag, I couldn't find my burlap bags, so I went searching in my stash, and I found these fabric gift bags that I picked this pack up from the Dollar Tree. And so they needed a little bit of distressing, so I pulled out my antique wax, and that is the Waverly Antique Wax from Walmart. I like this much better. I just need to stick with what I know, stick with what I like, and not be searching for other things, because this Waverly Antique Wax is what I like. So to dirty it up a little bit more, I am just adding, some of that antique wax, and just to kind of spread it around a little bit, I just misted it with water, and then I'll glue it to my American Girl right there at the bottom, just with some E6000 as well as hot glue. And then to give it a bit of whimsy, I'm adding some fine excelsior. I find this over at Hobby Lobby, so I'll stick that in that bag. And then this star is something that I've had on hand, and painted it like a golden yellow. It was in my stash. It was already painted. I just had never used it. So then I'll add the arms, and then I'll start sticking the things that I've made into the bag. And so let me tell you real quick how I made the flag and the 1776 tag, and also the fireworks. I'll share how I do that next. So to make my flag, what I did is I have this primitive country looking ticking fabric that I've had on hand. I just cut off a piece of that, and then in the middle, that is a barbecue skewer. I think at my local grocery store, they just had a pack of them in their household section. So I said, I could use those for crafting. And so for the flag, I'm just making it here by just hot gluing it and just putting the stick in the middle so that everything will be nice and tight here. For the stars flag, I got that fabric at Hobby Lobby. I just cut off a piece of that and just glued it there at the top. Now I wanted to give my flag just a little bit of body, and so I pulled out my Stiffen Quick spray. I have had this on hand for several years, but you can get it off of Amazon or anywhere fabric is sold. Usually they have Stiffen Quick. It's just a spray that you spray on your material or your fabric, and it just kind of stiffens it up a bit. And so then I just let that dry, and just love the way that it gives it a little bit of body, a little bit of wave to my flag. For the 1776 tag, I just have a market tag. These little tags I've had on hand and tea stained a whole bunch of them, and then I have them in a Ziploc bag, pull them out whenever I want to use them. Okay, so then I have a thicker chisel point black marker and just hand lettered 1776, just kind of making the letters look a little bit thicker in areas that I want. Then I add a little bit of doodling with my ultrafine Sharpie marker, and then let's see, that's the fine point, and then now I'm going back in with the ultrafine Sharpie marker. I love doodles and all of those squiggles just make my heart so happy. So then I'm taking my distress ink in the color, you guessed it, Vintage Photo, because that is my go-to distressing ink color. And so then I crumple it up a bit just to give it a tattered look, and then I like that look like that. Okay, so I had mentioned that I had a primitive star, and this is one that I've had on hand that I had painted for a project and never used it back in the day. And so also what I did is I added a little bit of that distress ink to my flag just to tatter it up a little bit more. And so then also I added some white highlight to my numbers just to make them pop and stand out a little bit on my tag. For my mini firecrackers that were in my bag, what I did is I just wrapped this red and white striped paper around a couple of the Tower Tumble blocks. Now these are the larger tumbling tower blocks that you can get from Five Below, and I have a box of these and have been using them for lots of different projects. I like them because they're a little bit larger than the ones that you can get at the Dollar Tree. So I just wrapped some scrapbook paper around that and just used my hot glue just to secure everything. And then at the top, what I did is use my navy acrylic paint and just paint the top of it. I did try to drill a hole in to put my fuse, or like the wick of the firecracker, but that didn't work too good. So I went to plan B, and so what I did first is wrap just some strips of this star fabric around the top of the firecracker so that it would have the, just the red and white and then the blue to it as well. And then for the fuse or the wick of the firecracker, what I'm going to use is some jute. Just make a knot of that and then just cut off the wick the way that I want, or fuse, whatever one chooses to call it. And so to kind of dirty up and distress the firecracker, I'm using my favorite and distressing ink, which is a Vintage Photo, just giving that, just some distress ink so that it all ties in together with my primitive country Americana American Girl craft. And I'll just start adding things to the burlap bag. The flag stick was just a little too long, so just trim that off with my scissors. I stuck that in there. And then the berries, the pit berries with the stars, those are some that I've had on hand. Those white pit berries come on a garland from Hobby Lobby that are usually you can find those all year round in the garland section. They come on like I said, a long garland. I just take them off and use the individual picks and just kind of position this around here the way that I like. Now I'm just going to make a jute bow, just 4 loops, 2 on each side, and just attach that to the top. For the 1776 tag, I just attached that with a rusty safety pin just there to the top, kind of like hanging off of the bag. Just so cute. I just love this so much, and just appreciate you being here and loving all of my country crafts, all of my, old school primitive country Americana. I love all of this stuff, and it just really makes my heart very happy, and I'm just so grateful that you're here. So I'll continue to add some things, position her little fireworks in here. And so I thought I was finished. I had taken the pictures and was looking at it. I was like, she looks like she's missing something. The arms kind of looked a little funny. Like, I at first thought that I was going to make a banner and put America across it, but then I didn't want to cover up the little stars at the bottom of her like dress. So I decided to add some fairy lights. So that's what I did. I had a pack of these fairy lights from the Dollar Tree, and so that's what I did. I just positioned them around and added the little battery pack in the back of that bag, and just wrapped it around the arms or the actual hands where it looks like she's holding something, and I love that so much better.